There's a reason people still feel nostalgic about Windows XP. For decades, that was the promise of Windows. A tool that stayed out of your way, respected your hardware, and let you use your computer the way you wanted to. From Windows XP to Windows 10, familiarity built trust. Windows 11 broke it.
A week since they axed 10, and now Microsoft is straight up borking Windows
When
11.
Microsoft launched Windows 11 in October 2021, it wasn't just another update. It was a statement, a declaration that Windows was no longer just an operating system, but a controlled platform. One designed around strict hardware rules, forced services, and a radically different philosophy. What followed wasn't excitement, it was confusion, frustration, and backlash. Twitter blew up. One user wrote, "My 3-year-old gaming PC is suddenly unsupported? Are you kidding me, Microsoft?" Millions of users found their perfectly good computers unsupported. Long-standing features disappeared overnight. Performance claims didn't match reality, and for the first time in Windows history, people started asking a dangerous question: is Microsoft still building Windows for users or for itself? To understand how Windows 11 went so wrong, we need to look beyond the interface and into the decisions that reshaped Windows forever. In October 2021, Microsoft officially launched Windows 11 and presented it as the future of personal computing. According to the company, this was not just another update, but a next-generation operating system designed to be faster, more secure, and more modern than anything before it. The announcement was surprising. Back in 2015, Microsoft had famously declared Windows 10 to be the last version of Windows. The plan was simple. Windows would become a service, continuously updated rather than replaced. So when Windows 11 was announced, the question immediately became, why now? The answer, at least officially, was security and design. Microsoft wanted to enforce modern security standards and introduce a refreshed interface aligned with new hardware. But behind the scenes, this shift represented something bigger. Windows 11 was Microsoft's attempt to regain control of its ecosystem and redefine how users interacted with their PCs. The problem was that while Microsoft focused on vision and marketing, it underestimated the importance of trust, familiarity, and backward compatibility. Windows users are not casual adopters. Many rely on their systems for work, gaming, and critical tasks. Changing expectations without preparing the user base is always risky, and Windows 11 would soon demonstrate just how costly that risk could be. The biggest shock came immediately after launch: Windows 11's hardware requirements. For the first time in Windows history, Microsoft placed strict limits on which systems could officially upgrade. Features like TPM 2.0, Secure Boot, UEFI firmware, and relatively recent CPUs became mandatory. On paper, this sounded reasonable. In practice, it was devastating. Millions of perfectly capable computers were suddenly labeled unsupported. Systems with powerful processors, large amounts of RAM, and dedicated graphics cards failed compatibility checks simply because they lacked TPM 2.0 or used older, yet still capable, CPUs. Users who had invested heavily in premium hardware felt betrayed. Tweets exploded: "My gaming rig runs every AAA title fine, but Microsoft says it's obsolete? This is wild." Microsoft argued that these requirements were necessary for improved security, particularly against modern threats like firmware-level attacks. However, the technical community quickly challenged this narrative. Enthusiasts demonstrated that Windows 11 could run smoothly on older hardware, using simple workarounds. Visual demos on YouTube showed Windows 11 booting on unsupported PCs with full functionality, which only fueled the backlash. The result was widespread frustration. Businesses delayed upgrades. Home users ignored update prompts. Many felt Microsoft was artificially pushing hardware upgrades rather than genuinely protecting users. Instead of making Windows more accessible, Microsoft created a barrier that divided its user base into supported and left behind. This decision alone damaged Windows 11's reputation. From day one, it felt less like an upgrade and more like an exclusion. If hardware restrictions angered users, design changes confused them. Windows 11 introduced a redesigned taskbar and start menu, aiming for a cleaner, more modern look. Icons were centered, menus simplified, and animations smoothed. Visually, it looked polished. Demonstrations at launch showed drag-and-drop windows snapping into place, but functionally, it felt incomplete. Core features that had existed for decades were removed. Even the system clock was limited to a single monitor setup. Reddit threads were full of screenshots comparing old and new taskbars, with captions like, "This is progress," and "Why take away my start menu folders?" The Start menu suffered a similar fate. Live tiles, a defining feature of Windows 10, were removed. Custom folders were missing. The Recommended section replaced user-controlled layouts with suggestions that many felt resembled advertisements rather than helpful shortcuts. These were not minor inconveniences. For longtime Windows users, muscle memory plays a huge role in productivity. Removing familiar tools disrupted daily workflows. What Microsoft saw as simplification, users experienced as regression. The biggest issue was not change itself, but the lack of choice. Windows had always been known for flexibility. Windows 11 replaced that philosophy with a more locked-down approach, closer to mobile operating systems than traditional desktops. For power users, this felt like a betrayal of Windows' core identity. Beyond design, Windows 11 faced serious performance and usability issues. Despite promises of speed, early versions showed inconsistent results. AMD Ryzen processors suffered noticeable performance drops. Gamers reported lower frame rates, especially when security features like virtualization-based security were enabled. RAM usage increased, and background processes consumed more system resources than before. Microsoft eventually released patches, but the damage was already done. The narrative had shifted from faster Windows to unfinished launch. At the same time, Microsoft began forcing its ecosystem more aggressively. Setting up Windows 11 required a Microsoft account, particularly on the Home Edition. Local account options were hidden. Internet connectivity became mandatory. Microsoft Edge was deeply integrated, while alternative browsers felt discouraged. OneDrive, widgets, and Teams were pre-installed and difficult to fully remove. Privacy concerns added another layer of distrust. Telemetry data collection increased. Advertising IDs were enabled by default, and disabling tracking completely became nearly impossible. Tweets highlighted it. "Feels like Windows is watching every move I make." Instead of empowering users, Windows 11 appeared to prioritize data, services, and ecosystem lock-in. That shift fundamentally changed how many people viewed Microsoft's intentions. Demonstrations on tech channels showed real-time telemetry collection and OneDrive syncing in the background, making the problem visually obvious. The reaction from the tech community was swift and largely negative. YouTube reviewers criticized missing features. Reddit forums filled with complaints and workarounds. Businesses delayed migrations. Even years after launch, Windows 10 remained more popular in usage statistics. Microsoft slowly responded. Updates restored some missing taskbar features. Performance improved, stability increased. But first impressions matter, and Windows 11 never fully recovered from its launch reputation. The bigger issue lies in the lessons this situation revealed. Windows succeeded for decades because of compatibility, flexibility, and user choice. Windows 11 challenged all three. By prioritizing control over convenience, Microsoft underestimated its audience. Windows 11 is not a complete failure. It has strong security foundations, modern visuals, and future-focused technology. But it became a cautionary tale of how ignoring users can turn an upgrade into a controversy. But it represents something far more worrying. It marks the moment when Windows stopped being a user-first product and became a leverage point, a way to push accounts, subscriptions, data collection, and ecosystem lock-in. The operating system that once empowered users is now quietly reshaping their behavior. Community reactions in 2026 continue. Posts on forums like r/Windows 11 and tech blogs show screenshots of workaround tools, scripts to disable telemetry, and heated discussions about switching to Linux or Mac OS. History shows that monopolies don't collapse because they're weak. They collapse because they forget why people chose them in the first place. Microsoft has survived for decades because Windows was flexible, familiar, and compatible with almost everything. If Microsoft continues down this path, prioritizing control over choice, services over stability, and growth over goodwill, it risks something far more valuable than market share: user loyalty. And once users truly start leaving, whether to older systems, alternative platforms, or entirely new ecosystems, winning them back becomes nearly impossible. Windows 11 isn't just a controversial update, it's a warning sign, a reminder that even the most dominant platforms can decay if they forget who they were built for. The future of Windows is still undecided, but one thing is clear: it won't be secured by force alone.